This interview is with our new and very special friends from Australia, Mr. and Mrs. Leon and Joyce Sachse. Joyce may be down a little bit. It is being recorded at the Regency Hotel in McKinney, Texas on August the 1st, 2014, starting about 10 o'clock. We've been talking for a while, which is cool. Thank you for taking time to let us visit with you today and to give us some information about you and your work. First, we want to make sure if it's okay with you if we record this interview and use it on the Sachse Historical Society's website and in other forms of media. Is that all right with you? All right. Would you please give us your name and your wife's name and where you currently live?
I'm Leon Sachse, or as you say, Sachse. Some of our people say it's Sachse, some say it's Sachse. I say Sachse, and it's Joyce. So Joyce, she'll be out here shortly, we hope. So, but we come from Pomona in Victoria, in Australia, which is to anybody that might know where that might be. We're in the Grampians, which is about 300 kilometres northwest of Melbourne towards Adelaide.
So in Australia, where would that be actually?
In the southern part.
Southern part?
Yeah, in the southern southwestern part of Victoria, which is right down the bottom. We're the smallest state of Australia.
Well, would you tell us a little bit about your children? You showed us some pictures. You have, how many children do you have and grandchildren? Could you give us just a little bit of that?
I've got 4 sons, ranging from 36 years to, I suppose, 28, 29. They're all married, my partners. We have 6 grandchildren, 2 grandsons and 4 granddaughters. One was born on the 20th.
You got a little one now, don't you? A new grandchild?
And they're born on the 20th of July, so we haven't seen it yet.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That'll be something to look forward to when you get back. So your children, you have what, 4 sons, did you say?
4 sons.
And they all live, and do you have any daughters? No daughters?
No
Daughter-in-laws.
Daughter-in-laws.
And 6 grandchildren. They all live
All in
reasonably close
Victoria.
to you.
About 2 hours. One lives an hour, the others all live about 2 hours away.
Would you tell us where you were born and where you grew up?
I was born in Loxton in South Australia. So, and that's it's in the Riverland on the Murray River in South Australia, and it's probably 2 hours drive from Adelaide, and probably an hour from where our ancestors actually settled in Inverview, an hour and a half away from there. I grew up in the Murray, and at the age of 16, I joined the police force in South Australia as a cadet, and then when I was about 18, shifted to Victoria, where I remained there for another 34 days. I'm still living there, but I was in the police force for another 34 and a half years.
So you were on the police force. I know that it was, I wasn't sure whether you were in the police force or the fire department.
Well, all my career was in the country area, so because all the fire brigades are all volunteers, it'd be nothing to sort of help them out as well, along with the ambulance. Some of our, the towns I lived in, the ambulances were all volunteers, so, but even when they weren't, you could find yourself driving an ambulance to a hospital because there was only one person there. So even though you're in the police force, you had a lot of things, you put a lot of caps on.
Yeah, what was it like here in our country, the fire department takes care of the ambulance type services now, but it used to, it was volunteer, and sometimes, you know, that's kind of what you were doing, I guess, kind of filling all those positions. So, but you worked in the police force as a vocation.
As a vocation, yep.
How long were you there?
All up with South Australia, 37 and a half years.
And have you retired from there, or you officially retired?
I've officially retired from the police force, and I now work with people with disabilities, and we do like people's lawns and gardens, people's lawns and gardens. I teach them how to use lawn mowers and whippersticks, or you call it weed whackers or whatever. They use hedge trimmers, and I even teach them how to ride on lawn mowers, and so yeah, that's a good job.
Yeah, well, now the area where you live, it's not a large town, is it? Did you say it's
350 people.
350, oh wow. And you kind of live on the outskirts, or?
No, we live probably 60 metres from the main shop. We live right in the middle of town.
Okay, well.
We've only got, in the town, we've only got one shop, and that's for our fuel, for your gas. Post office, like a little general store, you get your cups of coffee or some sandwiches. We have a hall where people can go and meet. We have one school with 37 kids. 2 years ago I had 9. We have one church, and we have one bar and bistro, which is shaped like an old shearing shed. And that's it, that's what we have in our town. And a shed for 2 fire trucks.
Well, you need to. Well, now, did you go to school?
In Loxton.
Loxton. Do they have like elementary, middle school, high school like they do here? Or
Primary school, you go to primary school to grade 7, and then you go to high school until year 12. But in our day, if you had your vocation already organised, you used to leave school at year 11, and then you just go, like I said, I joined when I was 16. I did year 11, and then I was in the police force. I finished year 11 when I was 15. So and then I joined the police force when I was 16.
So did you go to college, or was your police force what your...
No, well that's, you do, I would have done 4 years training in the police academy before we actually graduated. With Victoria, when I transferred to Victoria, or resigned and joined again, it was 20 weeks, and then you're out in the street.
Is that a large, where you were, with the police force you were on, was it a very large
Police
area?
force? Victoria, each state has their own, it's not like over in America, each state has their own police force. So like Victoria's got one police force, that's all. So I could transfer from one part of Victoria to another one, to any police station that come up. Where like Texas would have, I don't know how many police stations.
Every city does.
Every city's got their own police station. Well, see, that doesn't happen.
So there is a state, similar to what we call a state here, it's an area of several cities.
Just you have one city, and then you have your outskirts, and so depending on the size of the town, like Bendigo, Ballarat, Geelong are all the cities, because of their population. But all the other places are just towns.
So the police force would
cover
work in any of that, any area inside that.
I could transfer anywhere in Victoria I wanted to any police station. They have a vacancy come up. If I was in Donald, where I finished, they might have had a sergeant's vacancy come up in right up in the mountains on the other side of Victoria. I can actually put in for that vacancy, and if I'm the one they select, you go to a selection panel, then I get that position, and then they've got to move me over there.
What did you do? What did you do at the police station these years when did you?
The last 13 and a half years I was in charge at Hull, where I was a sergeant in charge. And then I had 2 other members underneath me, and I had the responsibility of literally doing all the bookwork, all shift work. I'd still work the shift work myself. If another sergeant from another station was sick or went on holidays, I'd have to do his work for him. So I'd have to go over his, could be 30 or 40 kilometres away. Our area in Donald covered 2,500 square kilometres. So each station around me that you could cover could also cover 2,500 square kilometres. If I was the only sergeant working on the weekend, on the Saturday and Sunday, I'd be responsible for any emergency that happened to the South Australian border, which is a 4-hour drive away. So I'd have to drive for 4 hours to attend whatever it was and sort it all out and then come back home again.
I don't guess you had helicopters or faster ways to drive, huh?
If we had a siege in Donald, we'd have to get our, what they call the Special Operations Group up from Melbourne. Could be waiting 3 hours.
And is that kind of what the Special Operations Group, when they had this plane, the Malaysian plane that disappeared, and they don't really know for sure at this point where it is, they had different people from Australia going out. Is that part of what the Special Operations Group?
Our Special Operations...
Part of the military, or?
No, our Special Operations Group come within the police force. They're actually a special unit within the police force. So if they have a siege, they have a terrorist threat or something in Victoria, they handle it. They're the blokes that have got the semi-automatic firearms. They've been the ones that wear the big bulletproof vests that have got all...
Yeah,
it's like a SWAT team. It's like a SWAT team, but they over here they come within the station. Over there they're actually a unit, but they're based in Melbourne. It's the same as our dog squad. We have a dog squad for searching for drugs or... they're actually,
K9, they call them K9.
Yeah, they're in Melbourne. If we want the homicide squad to investigate a murder, they're in Melbourne. If you want the arson squad, or you want, we have a particular squad that will investigate a fatal accident. If there's any more than 2 people killed and there's someone at fault, they send a special unit up from Melbourne to investigate. And they're proper criminal investigation people, but they're within a traffic unit. So
it's not really part of the local police department, it's
part of Victoria Police Force. And the voting squad come from Melbourne. So if we've got big lakes and we want to patrol, you'd contact them, they'd send a group of blokes up with boats and patrol your lakes. So if you had anything special on, there's a horse branch, there's an air wing. They actually fly blokes around the state. They've got helicopters in Melbourne. So if we want helicopters up in the country, you can get them. You just have to request them. Just have to request them.
So after you got out of high school, you went straight into the police force, and that was your first job and pretty much your vocation until you retired.
I used to work, when I first joined as a cadet, I was clearing like $17 a week as a cadet. And out of that you had to buy all your own uniforms and your
How much a week?
$17. That was in 1970. So and then you had to buy all your own uniforms and everything like that out of that. You had to have a haircut every fortnight, and that was it. You can imagine what the 70s were like with all the long-haired beards, and we had short back and sides. So everybody knew exactly who you were, you know. And if you played sport, like I used to play football for a local NRL side over here. Well, I played similar football for a junior side, tied up with a major league in Adelaide, as did 2 other cousins of mine, 3 other cousins of mine who play for a different team. And unfortunately for his father, he was more upset with me because I didn't go and play with his sons than I did for this other team.
When you talk about football, are we talking about like America's version or
Australian
what we call soccer?
Australian rules football.
It's like rugby, it's actually a version.
It's a
version of football similar to here?
No.
You don't wear pads, right? You don't wear the
No,
pads.
they don't in rugby. We see over there we play New South Wales, Queensland, and they've got a mate, and it's rugby. So it's like griddle.
Yeah, I've seen rugby.
But they don't wear pads either.
Yeah.
And then we play rugby union, which is similar to what they play in England. And then we play Australian rules football.
And that's what you play.
Yeah, and it's similar shaped ball, but you've got a bigger oval and you kick the ball a lot further, and you don't have to worry about passing it back and scrums and all this. You don't have any of that. It's how you can move the ball quicker and get it through the goals the other end before the opposition get it. And that's what.
Now you play that kind of semi-professionally, or is this?
Only as it started off as a junior, and then I got injured to I kept getting knocked out. Kept leading with my head. So it's
The downside of that.
yeah, but my 2 cousins, they actually represented South Australia at the highest league.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were very good footballers. And I've got a son that looks, if you put a cousin in Adelaide next to my son, both at the same age as 21, you'd swear they were twin brothers. They look, and they play football exactly the same. And like my son's a very good footballer too.
They all like the sports.
Oh yeah.
Love it, yeah.
The whole, like I've got my grandson now, he's 11, and he's been one of 4 to be picked out of Geelong to go to a special basketball school during the next school break. And Geelong's got probably 150 to 100,000 people.
Wow.
So he's only one of 4. Sure. But he's 11 and he plays in under 14s. And he plays 4 times a week and he's training.
That's it, basketball?
Yeah.
Basketball.
So he actually plays in an under 14 side for their mate that's like whoever the Dallas side is in basketball. He actually plays for their under 14 side. So that he'll work through that. Yeah. So the whole family's
Sports actually. Well, now do they have I know baseball.
Yeah, they do play baseball.
Similar to same as what's here. Pretty much. Basketball is pretty much the same, and the football is kind of not.
Oh yeah, that's not. Well, other than the rugby, it's a bit similar to gridiron.
Well, do they have soccer? Is soccer big in Australia like
big in
this?
Australia. Well, we play soccer in the World Cup.
Yeah, they call it FUTBALL or something. Instead of FOT, I saw that when they was having the World Cup, they call it FUTBALL.
Yeah.
But it's not the same.
People call it football.
Yeah.
It's actually soccer.
Soccer.
But Australia, because we're such a multicultural country, got all the, soccer's been in Australia since I was probably 13, 14 year old. Because we had the Greeks and the Italians first settled Australia after World War II. Because then they bring all their soccer and their food and everything with them, and that's how they sort of, you get all these different sports. They play lacrosse in Australia. They play polo, they play...
Cricket.
Got cricket, yeah. It's very, Australia's probably, for the size of it, it's only 25 million people in Australia, and yet it's the same size as America in land mass.
What is the primary sport there? Or what is the main sport
In
Australia?
depends where you live. If you live in New South Wales and Queensland, rugby league, so it's got grid on. They've also got Australian rules football teams in the major league in Queensland and New South Wales, but all the other states it's football and cricket and basketball and tennis.
Oh yeah.
Netball.
What's that?
Netball.
Netball? Is that what they call tennis?
No, netball's what the women play.
Oh.
And they play like against Jamaica and all these sort of players that play netball. The girls are like 6'4" tall. And instead of having a backboard to help shoot the goals, they've only got a small ring and they throw the holes.
Wow.
And if you ever get on the internet to what you want to watch it, just type in Australia.
You'd like to play with 6 foot 4 with you.
Just type in netball and like,
Step on me.
yeah, so a lot of teams play that. Hockey.
Yeah.
Play a lot of hockey. Australia have got probably the 2 top hockey sides in the world.
Oh yeah.
Volleyball.
Yeah.
And volleyball. Play volleyball.
Volleyball's kind
There's
of
not
world.
too many.
Beach volleyball team.
Yeah.
Did pretty well.
Yeah.
Olympics last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they play. They've actually got gridiron teams in Australia that they play. There's teams playing in Melbourne and Sydney and that sort of thing.
Well, you've made a long trip to come to Sachse, Texas. How did you come about getting oriented to come here? I know you've been visiting around the country some, but how did all this, did you just...
14 years ago, I tapped Sachse in the computer, see what I could come up, because we were coming to America, see what I could come up with. Come up with the city of Sachse.
When was this?
14 years ago.
14 years, oh, okay.
Year 2000. Unfortunately, due to the time restraints we had then, it's too far to come to Dallas to get back to Los Angeles to fly out. So, but I typed it in and did some research, and I thought, when I found that it's William Sachse had come from Prussia, I thought they've got to be related in one sense or another, and sort of try to do, but when you try and do more research over it, you can't find much out. So, and I thought, well, the only way to try and find things out is to come here and find out. So we left it for the last part of our holidays to be in Dallas to go to Sachse to find out whether or not there's going to be some relation tie-up. And I think there will be a tie-up.
Probably hasn't been, yeah.
You know, like, and as I said to them the other day, I said William wouldn't have been his name would have been Will Elm.
Yeah.
And he would have had another Christian name somewhere along the line. And it'll be good to go back. But all the ancestors, when you read this book, you'll find out they've come from Prussia, but they've come out through Germany. And some of them actually been living in different parts of Germany and in and around Prussia, but they're all related.
Well, now you, so 14 years ago, you kind of started looking into this. When did y'all actually plan this trip? Just fairly the last couple of years or so?
18 months ago, we started planning it. And then we got in contact with Denise Weiss, who used to work in there.
Oh, yeah.
And she was helping me out with some, but 14 years ago, I was in contact with Peter Jobe, who used to be a policeman there. Peter Jobe, Paul Jobe. Paul Jobe, he used to be a policeman there, and he sent me a whole heap of stuff on Sachse.
Oh, really?
Sachse. So, and we sort of did a bit more then, and I said, I'm going back this time.
Come back.
I've got to find out, you know, and it just claws at you. It's one of those claws at you, and I said, I've got to go and just find out and see what I can find out.
Oh, She's doing a lot of genealogical work, and then we're, with the Historical Society, we're trying to, add, like these interviews, they'll be posted online, and then different people in our area, or we've interviewed quite a few, and we're putting them together. Because it's interesting to folks like maybe from your country that don't get a chance to come here to be able to look at that and see, hey, these people, here. And you'll see Chief Beach that you interviewed, and our mayor, he's on the videos. The fire chief, well, we haven't done Mr. Crawford, but the current one, but previously the gentleman was there for a good while, Doug Kendrick, we got him. But kind of gives you a little bit of a genealogical tool.
Oh, there's this, the chief of police, Dennis, he's been doing so much work. Like, we've been on the computers together, because he was the only one I really had.
He's the one that called me last week, said that, or I guess week before last night.
Well,
Last week,
He teed up those other members of the Sachse family to come. And like, I couldn't believe when I seen them, how much resemblance there is between them.
Did you get to meet the Don Sachse and Sean Sachse and some of them?
Sean, so Sean was Sean was one I didn't ever see. He met Don.
That's Sean's
Sean is-
dad. Don is Sean's dad.
Don is Sean's dad. Okay, so,
There may be more than one,
because there was the young lady,
Yeah, with the blonde hair.
blonde hair, I think it was her dad.
Yeah, he was there. He was that little bloke with, and then there was that other elderly gentleman
Well, Craig was.
with actually his wife's sick.
I'm sorry to get them out of town until last
Yeah,
night.
his
but
wife
And I
was
don't know them well enough to be able to.
Sean actually works just right down the street here at the Ford place. And
Oh, right.
I didn't know for sure whether I didn't get a chance to tell anybody.
He, one of them's son wanted to come, but he works for something with computers or something, had the end of the month thing, and he couldn't get there.
Yeah,
So,
I know,
and that was his son, so it might have been the other way around. But just the two gentlemen that were there, and the lady, there was the lady at the Historical Society. The gentleman, you only have to go through the book. And some of the relations, even like my second or third, my great-grandfather's brothers, their families.
Yeah, I looked at this book. I got it yesterday, and we had a meeting last night after I got in, and I see the book. See the book. We'll get some good pictures of all this here, but I read through this. I read the first part of it. And I looked at the dog, but I didn't study all the. There's a whole bunch of charts. Somebody has done a lot of work. And now, how are these related? I noticed there was like a committee that was set up here.
They're all related.
They're all related to you.
They'll all be related. My uncle's the one that was involved with my sister. That's him back there, and he always used to keep near the back. He would have been in his 80s when he did that.
Now, this was in '87 or something, wasn't it?
But they would have got the whole committee out. They'd all be related, even though you might find someone to Barnes, or because if you go, you can see down here.
Yeah, I read the thing.
See Ruth Barnes. She was a Sachse. She's now Barnes when she gets married.
Yeah.
So they're all related. Everybody in this book is related to me, and anybody in Australia. They're all related.
So now, when did the family move to Australia? In 18 something?
Yeah.
I saw 1856 or something like that.
1868, I think. That's my great-grandfather there. Now, they don't know, they haven't even got a birthday on him. So, but his first two children were born in Düsseldorf and actually emigrated with the parents to Australia. So my grandfather was born in Prussia. That's
So number two is your grandfather.
That's my grandfather. And that would have been the house that they lived in on a farm. And a lot of the houses were built out of the limestone and the timber that was on the property. So all these stones would have been picked up out of the paddocks. We call them paddocks, you probably call them fields. And then they built a house, and they just used like a clay mud for their thing. In the early days, they'd have no floorboards in. They'd be just dirt floors, and they'd put mats or bags or whatever on the floor until they probably got to a stage where they could get enough money and cut the floorboards and put them all in.
So you're like a third generation in Australia.
Second.
Second.
My father was born in Australia, and I'm born in Australia.
His grandfather's born
In Prussia.
And you've got 2 more generations, your children and grandkids, so there's
Yeah.
actually, this is now on the, and there is a 4th generation in
That's it.
Australia.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Craig, was Craig was there? Okay, he's the 5th generation.
Yeah.
And then his grandkids are 7. So there's in our country, here there's, as far down as 7th generation.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they were actually born here because they descended of William Sachse. It would be real interesting to find out, there's got to be a connection.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when I did the research earlier, there's also Saxes in Los Angeles. Now, talking to someone, his first wife, he had been married twice, and they believe that some of the children from his first marriage moved to Los Angeles.
Well, now that did happen. Honestly, I don't know all of the people, but I do know that we've had contact, the Historical Society had contact with someone that lives in California somewhere that is a descendant of the Sachse family, one of the ex-wives or something.
Sure.
So that may very well be the same group.
Yeah.
Same
So that will be related to the Saxes in Sachse City, Sachse, there. So that will be related through the.
Yeah.
There will not be, and I'll guarantee it, there will not be a Saxe in the world that wouldn't be related to the initial back in.
Now, how do you pronounce, this is official, how do you pronounce S-A-C-H-S-E?
My brother says Saxe,
Sachse?
I say Saxe. But my children say Saxe because it's easier for people.
Sachse.
Yeah, just like SAX.
Yeah, Sachse.
When in Australia, Saxe is one of the hardest surnames to spell.
Oh, we get, listen to what we hear people call it. Sachse.
Yeah, and and I was explaining to them that I have 4 boys when we were at Donald, all playing for the same football club team. One in under 13s, one in under 16s, one in the seconds, one in the seniors. And when they put the team sheets up, they put them in the local milk bar so kids come along and see where they were playing and what position they were playing in on Saturday. And the 4 names were spelled differently. Everyone was spelled different. There wasn't 2 spelled the same, but they played for the same football team.
Yeah, well, that's, I can understand that.
So I said when I went to Sachse the other day, it was good to know someone could spell my name.
Give you lots of stuff with your name on it.
Yeah, that's right. Like it's.
Yeah, you got all sorts of stuff.
Oh, I do, we have it.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
I actually had to box them up and send it home.
You've got
Yeah.
I got to hand it to, we've lived in Sachse since 1988. There's a nice bunch of people. The mayor is a super guy, the chief of police.
Yeah.
Denise Vice, you mentioned her, she's working out here.
McKinney now, yeah. I met her the other day.
And she's actually working in where we are right now.
In McKinney, that's right.
She's just a super person, and I don't think you'll meet anybody up there that.
Well, I actually we bought some stuff over for her for doing the run around she did. So we met her the other day, so we went and actually met her and dropped some stuff off for her for the work she did.
She'll like that.
Oh, she did. She was over the moon about it. So.
Well, what are your plans for the future? Are you, when you're heading back to Australia, are you going to be visiting other areas? I know you visited a bunch of places down here.
We've been here for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
So we fly out tonight. 10 o'clock tonight, we fly out. It's a 16.5-hour flight from Dallas to Brisbane. We've got a 3-hour stopover in Brisbane, 2.5-hour flight from Brisbane to Melbourne. My brother's picking me up on a 3-hour drive home. So from the time we wake up this morning,
24 hours you'll be home.
yeah, and then at the time when we've been awake, it'll be 12 hours. It'll be probably 36 hours before we go to bed.
Wow.
And we lose a day.
It's hard to sleep on a plane.
Yeah, so we fly out tonight on the 1st and we get home on Sunday the 3rd.
Well, do you know of any other family members here in the country, in America, that you mentioned ones in California that may be, but you don't deal with?
I've checked everywhere. Everywhere we've been going,
You check?
I've been trying to check. And even cemeteries. I've been going around cemeteries, looking on cemetery lists. Not a one. Not a one. Tim was with me from West Virginia. He's got relatives towards the border in Mexico and Texas. He's found a lot of relatives. Well, a a lot of rights in cemeteries, and one even died at the in San Antonio at the Alamo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he's going to now. His brother's actually doing a genealogy thing. His mother was doing it for years, and she's died, and now his brother's chasing it. So
Did you go to San Antonio?
Yeah.
That's quite a place where to walk and all this stuff down there.
yeah. So, but there's no Saxes everywhere we went.
Yeah, I
Wasn't the way.
And I know it's not up north, because I've done a lot of genealogy upstate New York.
Really?
There are no Saxes. No, I mean, I've never come across the name until I moved here.
Really?
And you'll find that the only ones that, like yourself, I was born and brought up in South Australia. These are all in South Australia and Western Australia. One, like, each of these numbers is a family.
Australia.
So that,
Yeah, there's a chart up there.
so you've got family A. That would have been a sister to my great grandfather.
Okay.
There's a chart that says what ABCD is.
Yeah. So, but that's each of the letters is a family, and like my great grandfather was D. So he would have been number, even though he was the second eldest. They've gone in order of the family, and they're all related. They've all, the ones earlier in the book have gone to Western Australia, but the map where they've gone to Western Australia. The other ones, this will be all Western Australia. I've got the glasses on, that'll be Western Australia. All farming land. And there was actually we went to the Port Ferry Folks Fest down near us, and there was a gentleman that came from Canolan, which is in here. I asked him about whether he knew any Saxes over there, and he did, he went to school. So a lot of them were still on farms, but he said he came off a farm and he's like playing musical instruments and travelling around as a musician. There's a lot of people that are leaving the farm because it's just too hard. So, but to try and keep in contact with them, it's hard enough trying to keep in contact with my own cousins, because there's, like, even an hour, there's none of our, I don't think there's any of our grandkids in there yet, so it's...
Is it, I noticed it's a copyrighted book. Is there would there be a way we could maybe get a digital copy of this with the post, or is that something?
I think I've got some spare ones at home. My uncle that died, the one that was involved in this, gave us some extra books that were just left over.
Okay.
And
Well, if we could, if it would have to be, something that would be.
oh, right, from the committee. Most of the committee we did.
Yeah. Well, if you could, if it's something y'all don't mind doing,
No.
so we posted some books online, if you look on our website, that a couple of people have written about our area, and, but I did read this copyright, so I didn't want to start copying stuff if you didn't.
No, we haven't got a problem with it.
Well, maybe, could you just write me a letter or something to confirm that, email or something? And if you have an extra, if you have it in digital format, then that'd even be better. If not,
No,
we'll
they
take one and
would,
scan it.
when they did that, they would have had it in digital format.
But I mean, sometimes they digitize it. But I have a way to scan it. But I'd like to put it online anywhere, anybody.
Exactly, well, that's why I bought it out.
That's great.
That's one reason I bought it out.
You got an extra copy with you?
No, that's the only one I bought with me.
Okay.
So, and I
But we
thought,
won't have this one.
so that I've got another one at home. But there is in America there is a Sachse book available too, but I wouldn't buy it because you just don't know where they're married. I don't even, it's like through a genealogy, but I don't know how they're married up.
Some
And
of
to me,
those are,
they're-
some of those they just throw together and they're not
Yeah, and they
really.
ask big dollars for them.
Yeah, they've done
You-
one for,
You may not have time now, obviously, but, and you may not even be aware, you may not realize, did you know 50 miles from here in Fort Worth, 60 miles, there is a National Archives. Have you been over there?
I've not
There's a-
just learned about it.
I've been there, it's an interesting place. There's 4 or 5 of them in the United States. This covers the southwestern area of the United States. There's millions of genealogical records. You may go back to day one, back into the Indian Nation, when this was an Indian Nation area. And then if you want to do genealogical research on anything in this area, that's supposed to go.
All right, well, that'll be
It's free.
online anyway.
It's free. You've got, it's a huge place. There's 2 parts of it. One is the reason I went there is I had to get some court records from a few years back, and after the court records, the actual records are there. You go if you want to get a copy, they send you a certified copy of them out. You don't get the original, but the original's there. Another part, you go over to another building. I said, what's this other place? They said, well, this is where you do genealogical work. And they were at the time digitizing. Now, this was 7, 8 years ago I was over there. I didn't even know it existed, but it's in Fort Worth, which
we've been through Fort Worth, but
well, it's in the south part of Fort Worth. There's Interstate 35 and Interstate 20, and it's right on the northwest corner. It used to be an air base. It's a huge place. But that is people. I mean, I went there and there was whole groups of people doing research. You know, they looked at microfilm, and then they had a team of people. I understand that was actually, you know, digitizing all the records. But if you come back over, that would be something you might want to go over.
Yeah, so in the back of the book I pointed out the other day too that there's people that they found out.
I read about the circus performers.
Yeah. There's some here that they don't even know who they are or where they fall into. And then like that's and this one here goes back 1494 to 1576. Nuremberg.
Germany, yeah, that's where he was at.
My dad was stationed in Nuremberg after the war. He guarded the prisoners from the German land.
When I was in the police force at Nil, a bloke from Kiev, where it was a German like a base with had these ships, and he rode over looking for his half sister. I told him about it at the meeting, and I said, all I got was a letter with her photo on it. It was all written in German, and you just by getting something like that police force, you know that somebody's looking for somebody. So I took it and had it translated, and he hadn't seen his, or heard, this is probably 1990, hadn't heard from his stepsister or half-sister since 1969, and the last place he heard him was in the commercial hotel in Nil. That's it. So I found her in Sunshine, a suburb of Melbourne, married with 3 kids. So I contacted her and said, look, this bloke's looking for you. Are you interested or you're not interested? She said, no, I'm very interested. So I gave him the details and I sent him a letter back saying, this is where she is. All of a sudden, all this stuff started coming out from him. Berets from the Air Force, epaulets. He even sent me a cigarette lighter from an American gave him in 1945 that he took open with a picture of an Air Force bloke on it. So, and
that's interesting.
yeah, so yeah. And then I said to him, well, look, I'm looking for some research on my family because it was like East Germany and someone in East German, Poland after the war. And I said, can you do some research? I never heard back.
Well, I saw, you know, I always talk about this in the world here. Some families, for whatever reason, when we do these interviews, I usually try to get these out ahead of time because some people, they don't want to talk about, maybe they've been divorced or they don't talk about their wives. Some people have a brother in jail, you know, whatever, they just don't want to talk about it. And I noticed about here, because of indifference or caution on the part, caution. They very well could be.
My sister said that after she started making inquiries, they started looking over their shoulders because of the skeletons they were getting out of the closets.
Yeah, there's, you know, and that's unfortunate, but every family's got something. Was there anything else that you'd like to? We can talk forever. I don't want to take all your time. No, you're ready, but
I think my wife might be still asleep.
Well,
so I apologise for her not being here, but she's at rock bottom.
Well, after 3 months of traveling around, I tell you, I can fully understand that. We've been gone for about 4 days.
Well, we flew into Las Vegas, and again we had the same, but in reverse. We got there 4.5 hour flight, wait over in Los Angeles, and then an hour flight to Las Vegas. So we hadn't been to bed for 20 odd hours, 30 hours, but you still didn't go to bed until like 11 o'clock that night. So you start getting yourself in routine with where you are. So that's why we stayed 2 days in Las Vegas, and we were there 14 years ago and had a look, went back to have a look. But then we flew to Denver, to friends in Denver, and we were there 5 days. We had like second day 8 inches of snow, but we were still walking around the city while it's snowing, because if you don't go and do what you've got to do, you're going to miss out. So then we flew from Denver to Vancouver for 4 nights, and then we hired a car for 10 days and drove ourselves around the Rockies. Went to Calgary, flew out from Calgary to New York, 4 nights in New York. So you only got 4 days in York, so you're flat out. Then we had a tour from New York up through Boston, right up to Quebec, and then down through Ontario, through Canada, and through the Niagara Falls, through the Amish
I've been to
County.
Simcoe and Toronto and Niagara Falls. That's beautiful up there.
Yeah, so then we went through the Amish County and then out to Washington. We had 2 nights in Washington, caught a train and a bus to Roanoke in Virginia. Tim picked us up. We spent a week driving ourselves around West Virginia, place we hadn't been. Then we went to South Carolina to his sister's place. We spent 2 weeks driving around. We went down to Charleston, down the bottom part of
South Carolina.
Yeah, and then up through, what's the name of that beach?
Myrtle Beach.
Myrtle Beach. Before that we went over into Georgia to what's the city just over the... we went through Atlanta later on. But this is just down like real south in Georgia. Then we drove back up to Rock Hill, just near South Carolina, not far from Charlotte. And then we drove back up, picked him up, and then we went down through Georgia to see his daughter who was born in Australia and his grandson. And then we went down through there to Florida, to Tampa Bay, and met his brother down there. And we finished up driving from there through Miami to Key West and back to his brother's place and stayed another night. And we come through Louisiana, Mississippi, went through Georgia, Louisiana, and then we went to New Orleans and spent 3 nights in New Orleans. Then we come followed the coast right around out. We've come out into Texas, called into where the Texans beat the
Houston.
Yeah, there's a big site there where they've got the Houston battleship or whatever it is on display, and it's actually a big area where the Texans beat the Mexicans and got their independence. And,
Alamo and San Antonio.
That's
Galveston.
Well, it's near Galveston.
It's near Galveston,
But it's a big area, and they've got a big monument there. And it's where they literally beat Santa Ana in about 15 minutes. And what'd you say?
San Jacinto?
Something like that, yeah. Jacinto or something like that. So then we went round Houston, because we went to Cape Canaveral and went all the NASA stuff over there, and then we come back through San Antonio and worked our way around through Texas to here. So
You've seen more of the United States than most Americans have.
so we're just about with Tim in a month we did 6,000 miles, or 5,300
You
something
did,
miles.
yeah, a lot of it.
So,
Well, there's a lot to see here.
Yeah, there is.
There's a lot to see. We've got a lot of, you can just, in this Texas, you can see a lot of stuff. It's amazing.
so that wouldn't happen in Australia. There's not a lot to see in the middle of Australia other than dirt and dirt.
Well,
Dirt and bushes. There's not even water out there.
well, those pictures that you shared, those were, and if you have, like digital copies of those pictures, not right now, but whenever, we can post those on the website.
Which ones are those?
The ones in your book. Those are beautiful pictures.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is when I get home, I'll probably have even better ones, and
If you can,
I'll just send them over as an email.
your emails you can't commit, I can send a whole large file, but we can,
But you can download. Well, I can send like 20 photos at a time.
Yeah,
we make small photos.
there's bulk mailing services that don't cost anything.
Oh, right.
We transfer and Dropbox and some of those things that don't cost anything. You can post large files.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, if we get those, and we'll post them on our website. We've got.
What I could probably even do is put a whole heap of photos in a USB stick. When I send the book over, I'll put the information into the book, and then you just plug it in and get as many as you like.
Yeah. Well, they're beautiful pictures, and then there's a lot of folks that were just, nothing personal that you don't want, but anything that you don't mind, we'll be happy.
And like we've always said to like the other day, if anybody wants to come and visit, yell out, and especially some of the Saxes that might want to think, well, we'd like to see where your ancestors are. I'll take them. Their eyes will fall out of their head because a lot of the area hasn't changed for 100 years.
Yeah, wow.
Because there's nothing out there.
Well, it changes around here from day to day. It's, oh my God.
And like most of the roads aren't even bitumised.
Just dirt roads?
Gravel roads.
Oh, my goodness. Well, officially, thank you for allowing us this incredible opportunity. We appreciate your taking time to visit with us and to allow us to record these for our archives.
No, that's fine.
We appreciate
And if there's
it.
any information you want,
Please.
you've got my email address, just send it over and like we said, any of the Sachse family want to come out or even yourself want to come out and have a look, more than welcome.
Why don't we take a field trip?
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Oh, Diana.
Well, yeah, we were talking, it's like,
Yeah.
just take a little trip over.
Because my brothers were really interested in me coming here too.
Well,
Like they'll never get over here. And
Yeah.
the sister that helped with the book, she was really interested. Now my sons are really interested. They want to see and see what I
They
come
might
up with.
come, yeah. So that'd be, any of the folks that come, will, fix you up like we did.
Well, we weren't expecting that the other day. I was only expecting to drop some patches off with the chief and then come into the Historical Society to see what research I could do.
Did you get to go to the Historical Society?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we spent, been there a couple of hours.
Couple
there.
hours there,
Yeah.
walked around.
We're working on that quite a bit. That's a pretty nice place for a
Yeah.
town our size, and
Yeah.
in fact, we had a meeting last night after I got back. We had a meeting going to the EDC this afternoon with a deal to add another
Yeah.
room on there and get some more display cases and do some things. And we got a lot of stuff that,
Do you have a Lions Club and that in
There's
Sachse?
a Lions Club.
Just, I used to be in the Lions Club, so, and we used to do a lot of work within the community. If you find that like that, even the caboose needs repainting or whatever, approach the Lions Club, and they might make it a part of their job to help you out and go and do the work for you.
They're working on that, but the problem with with the caboose right now is it has lead paint.
Oh,
And
right.
that sets them off over here.
Yeah.
I don't know, I grew up around that paint. I used to play with mercury.
You're fine.
All they have to do is wear a face mask. And anybody that's
Now,
I like
but because of all the regulations, that's why the caboose has not been repainted. Well, that one went down on me. I guess that's a good time.
But if you approach the Lions Club or something like that, you might find that they'd be willing. They do.
We got some good folks here. You don't hear Charles Smith.
I've met Charles Smith once.
There's a pretty active Lions Club over here.
That might be Joyce coming out there. Might not be. I went there before, it's not very often.
So
She goes to sleep during
what's
the
been your favorite food over here? Just a silly question.
I don't know, like there's so much different. We normally cook, we don't normally eat out. We normally cook our own food. Everything we do is on a barbecue. Not everything, during the winter you cook inside, but normally in the spring and the summer if you have visitors. Like for us, we have visitors for a Sunday breakfast, you'd have cook on the barbecue, you'd have eggs, bacon, tomatoes, mushrooms, and then we have what we call a toad and roll. And what it is, it's bread, and you get glass or a cutter and you cut the centre out, and you put it on the bar, because we have hot plates. You don't have hot plates on your barbecue, we have a hot plate. So you put the bread on the hot plate with a bit of olive oil or something underneath it, put your bread down, cut your oil out, drop your egg in it, then you turn it over, and you've actually got toast and the egg in it.
Like toad in a hole.
It's a toad and roll. So you can cook things like that. So it's like fried bread,
Yeah.
but you've got the egg already in it, so you don't have to.
Those are good.
Oh.
So you cook all that for breakfast. So we've
Yeah, we gotta go.
Yeah.
We gotta go. No, I mean, we gotta go see you.
Yeah. we cook all that roast out in the barbecue. Like I could be working in the garden and we know we're gonna have a roast that night. I just get it cooking and everything in you just keep an eye on it, it just cooks itself.
Wow.
Then come back and put all the vegetables in it. We eat a lot of vegetables.
So y'all pretty much, everybody fixes their own food. They don't, like here, 90% of people eat out all the time. There's some active civilians, and I'm one of them.
In store, like there's probably 6,000 people somewhere. That's where I work with people with disabilities. And I was stationed at the police station there one time. They got their first McDonald's installed probably 3 years ago. Other than that, we've got 3 bakeries, which make pies, pasties, sausage rolls, your cakes, your lamingtons, and
I wish we had real bakeries.
and it's where you get bread, you get your rolls, you can get your cappuccinos. And the worst thing I've had over is coffee.
Oh, yes, you don't like the coffee?
Like, I don't mind brewed coffee, but we don't eat it. We don't drink it all the time. You might only have it if we have visitors, I'll put some brewed coffee in. Because the one I use, it actually grinds the coffee beans up and then puts them in, and then you brews your coffee itself. But it's, if you go, and then I've got like a cappuccino coffee machine maker. So you steam all your own milk and you can make hot chocolate. So, and like, just tastes, even if we get a cappuccino, it tastes nothing like. And we have iced coffee over there. And we ordered an iced coffee here, and you've got a cold coffee with ice blocks in it. And we're going,
They have some at Starbucks, you can run a bit out there, there's
but they put ice in theirs too.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's really not that, it's what we're used to, but it's not.
But see, our iced
Yeah.
coffee,
It really isn't.
our iced coffee, you'd go, say you'd have a cup. You we have instant coffee, which is granulated coffee.
Taster's choice.
Tester's choice. And we'd put some of that in. Depends how big a pot you make, it's how much coffee you put in. Then you would put a bit of hot water in it. So in a cup of this, you put that much hot water. So you mix your coffee up. Then you put it into a vitamizer. Then you fill it up full of milk and ice cream. The vitamizer all up. That's iced coffee.
Oh.
Now what's that vitamin? Is that
It's
like
a blender.
Blender.
Yeah.
And that's your iced coffee.
That's so much better.
You know, so it's, when we got over here and they put ice blocks in a cup of coffee, we got over there,
It's nice coffee.
and we don't have iced tea.
Really?
We have hot tea.
See, I might have to just bring my own.
No,
I drink
we
a
wouldn't.
lot of ice.
But I mean, you can make it.
Yeah, make it,
when,
yeah,
when we were
absolutely.
travelling
Same
around, I
thing.
made tin drinks, and so I made some for him, and we actually bought a kettle to go into the motel room. So Joyce, and we bought a Tester's Choice. So Joyce doesn't like brewed coffee, so she'd have a cup of coffee in the morning. And when you use that Tester's Choice, you should always put the milk in the cup with the coffee before you put any hot water in it, because you'll burn the coffee. If you put hot water on instant coffee, it burns it, and it'll give you a burnt taste.
That tastes
You
good.
put the milk you want in it. If you're drinking black water, you drink it black. But if you're drinking milk, you put your milk in it, and you won't burn your coffee. And it comes out a bit creamy, so it's...
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own technique, doing stuff, that's
Yeah.
what they do.
Yeah.
My dad used to keep Taster's Choice because my mother apparently couldn't stand coffee for whatever reason. But I would take it and mix it with a package of hot chocolate when I was in high
Yeah.
school. Put my water on it.
Yeah. So we have
We'd go off
Milo.
to school, break up a couple Andes mints, throw them in there.
We have Milo.
What's that?
Milo. It's like
Milo.
it's like a hot chocolate, but it's not as strong as chocolate. And we used to drink it like you need it off a spoon when you were kids, and it's just full of vitamins, and you can either have it hot or cold, so you can mix it in. You always mix it with a bit of hot water first, then you pour your milk in it. But it's a lot of kids drink it, a lot of adults drink it in the mornings or whatever. But it's full of energy for the kids. And so for breakfast, we always have cereal.
Yeah.
Always have cereal,
Cereal,
or
yeah.
toast. We have Wheat Bix. Like I eat Wheat Bix. Wheat Bix is probably the most healthy cereal you'll eat in your life. It's just full of everything in it that's good. So but when we come over here, you know, you get your, like here we get cereal for breakfast. That's all we have at home. So we're quite happy with you getting your cereal, not cornflakes. We get a lot of that cornflakes at home. It's not, we get really a lot of grain. All our bread that's made has like different grains in it.
Whole wheat grain.
All good food for us. Yeah.
Well, it's different, you know, it's, people over here, I guess, are just too busy and eating out, you know, wasn't a thing anymore. I mean, when I grew up, we ate out maybe, I lived at home for 18 years, and we ate out twice, and I can recall. My mom fixed, she did, that was just her thing.
And what was the time you used to get?
Yeah, oh yeah, on Fridays was the makeup day, and my mom was, I loved what my mom cooked, but on Fridays it was terrible, because it was whatever had been left over for 5 or 6 days, and it was not
Well, see, we have what they call bubble and squeak. If you have mashed potato and pumpkin and carrots and all that left over, we just put them all into one container. You get a potato masher, squash them all up, make them into little patties, put them on a barbecue and fry them, and turn them over.
That's what bubble squeak is. I never knew exactly what it was. I've read it in books and stuff, but I've
What did you
never.
call it?
Bubble and squeak.
bubbling squid.
Squeak.
Squeak.
Squeak. Squeak.
Sounded awesome. Squeak.
Squeak. Oh, squeak.
They bubble and squeak. So you never used to waste nothing. Or
Oh, yeah.
if you cooked up a leg of lamb or say roast pork or something, it's mainly lamb. We used to eat lamb when we were kids, and that's all we really ate. But if there's any left, they get the meat grinder on the table, grind it all up, cut it all up, and then you put in a container with onion and whatever you want to put in it, and then you put mashed potato on top and then have it.
It's like a shepherd's pie.
Shepherd's pie.
Well, my folks grew up during the Depression here. They were, my dad would have been 100 years old this year, and my mom would have been 108. And they grew up during what we call the Depression, the 20s and 30s here, and they learned to save everything.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I appreciate that. I wasn't being critical about my mom how good at all, but
We were the
nothing
same.
went to waste.
My dad was brought up in the Depression. They used to eat parrots, wild pigeons, and
Yeah.
so and rabbits mainly.
I
Rabbits,
think it's tough here sometimes with, can we get, I want to get a picture of you and Tricia,
Yeah.
and then maybe get her to take a picture of me, and then we'll get out of your hair.
All right.
Good, look good. Well, we get a picture.
Okay.
I'm not trying to tell you what they do.
Go to get the middle.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
That same height.
Yeah,